Hello and welcome to this episode of Root and Branch, November, end of autumn. Hey Nina, how are you?
I'm very well, Chris. How are you?
I am good.
I have to say this week,
Yes.
please note that the activities of LCD are independent and separate from S&P Global Ratings. S&P Global Ratings maintains a separation of analytical and commercial activities. As was recently announced, LCD will soon be divested from S&P Global.
And the value of our investments may go up and down.
Please ask the line payer's permission.
Yes. Right, thank you very much. So let's start with primary activity, both sides of the pond as well. It's going pretty good.
Yeah, so in the European market, as we've talked about before, I think, Chris, it's basically becoming the norm that you have sustainability linked pricing mechanisms across both the high yield bond markets and the European loan market. So in high yield bonds recently, we had quite a busy week, and it's something like 80% of the deals all had coupon step ups linked to ESG elements. And in the loan market right now, out to syndication, we've got the T-Mobile Netherlands, which is out with a 2 billion euro single tranche deal backing its buyout. So this is the biggest buyout sort of single facility we've seen in sort of since last summer, since the MásMóvil. It's actually the biggest sustainability linked transaction we've seen in Europe since last summer as well, both since the last MásMóvil transaction. So it's just really interesting about how they're becoming pretty much the norm now, pretty standard, like we saw Cov Life like a few years ago.
Yes, yeah. So in other words, if you don't have it, there's something wrong.
Perhaps. What's really interesting though this week is we've seen a deal called Covanta out in the US. It's a sustainable waste and energy solutions firm. Now, they're actually out with the first institutional term loan with sustainability-linked pricing ratchets. It's the first US-only deal. So we've seen a few cross-border transactions where there's been sort of a margin ratchet on the US portion as well. But this is the first US-only one. And, of course, we've seen a lot of green loans, green bonds and things across in the US. But it's the first institutional term loan, which is US-only. It's quite big. It's 1.335 billion term loan B and 100 million term loan C. And they've got a 12.5 basis point step up across on 2 KPI.
Okay, and big enough to be considered like the broadly syndicated market, yes.
Absolutely. So obviously sort of the US a little bit slower perhaps than Europe. It's taking a bit longer to catch on. But obviously this first one, so let's see where it goes from there.
Okay, so that's really good news. Largest ever in Europe, America starting out, more activity. That's really good. And then on the CLO front, there was an interesting development with Fidelity.
Yes, so we have had the first Article 8 structured CLO in Europe. So this is Article 8 of the EU Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, SFDR. And Article 8 states that the investment promotes, among other characteristics, environment or social characteristics, or a combination, provided that the companies in which the investments are made follow good governance practices. So Fidelity International, with its Grand Harbour CLO, which is 404.75 million, actually works that Article 8 language into it. Now, it's certainly not the first fund, obviously, that's structured to Article 8. We understand that many of the sort of just Fidelity's own funds, non-CLO funds, are structured with Article 8, and obviously many others across the market.
But I think it's the first CLO. Yeah, sorry,
yes.
It's first CLO, yeah.
But again, as with the sort of US term loans, should be the first of many. Some people are saying that within the next 12 to 15 months, 100% of CLOs, so every CLO that we're going to see, is going to be with this Article 8 language structured around it.
I mean, I still find it interesting, and this is reflected in the private equity world, that, people are at the moment trending towards internal systems and internal scorings, which I always believe as an investor is, sorry, not me as an investor, but if you are an investor, that will make life a little bit difficult because everybody has their own different system. So you're going to have to be monitoring lots and lots of different systems. So it'll be interesting to see how the market moves to standardization. Of course, Alpha doing things with that in PE world and being very successful. A lot of the PE firms I talk to say they use the Alpha sheets.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see how the market moves generally.
It's such a huge issue, standardization. And of course, obviously issues about ambition around to avoid KPI and sort of being held to account and things. These are all the things that are coming up time and time again. So certainly I think you're right. I mean, I still think we're very much at the beginning of
Yes.
the curve.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
other things are going to develop, other things are going to grow out of this. I mean, these are just the first ones. We're still talking very much at the cusp, the opening of the markets. But it's going to be very interesting to see how they develop.
No, I completely agree. And I have to say, of all my years in the markets, this is the fastest developing trend I've ever seen. And it's fascinating watching it develop, and really interesting and really important, because, of course, we've just finished COP26. So we all know how important it is.
But I feel like with the speed as well, there comes a lot of cynicism. Obviously, these things,
Yes.
People, every single conference and things we go to at the moment, every roundtable, every webinar that we're attending, ESG is such a big issue to so many people, and it really wouldn't have been that way 5 years ago. Maybe not even sort of 2-3 years ago. It would have been mentioned as sort of a niche element, something. Oh yeah, and this other thing that we now have to think about. But this is, we're hearing this is at board level. This is being discussed at every stage of every process of every deal. And of course that brings some cynicism. Of course that brings some, sense of, we're just all banging this on to be trendy and to be.
Yeah, you know what? During the coverage of COP26, one of the delegates said it's really interesting what's going on. People have moved from not wanting to disclose. That was the initial, disclosure. So we've gone beyond disclosure, and now their fear is greenwashing. So everybody disclosing, but in a way that isn't impactful. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just, here's some data for you. And that was fascinating. And we often talk to people, and they talk about impact and where are we going in our journey, and not just it's gone beyond disclosure now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lovely.
And I think this is going to be the theme for next year or so, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, thank you very much, Nina. That was, as ever, a perfect summary of where the market is going. If any of you have any questions for Nina or me, please feel free to contact us. We will see you again next month in December for our Christmas edition.
Of course.
Thank you. Bye.